understand the danger that they were walking into.
Oh, up.
The plane had flown into the sea, at full speed.
The passengers would have, of course, been hysterical. Computers, laptops, phones would have been flying around.
Boeing resolved the criminal investigation against them in part by paying a $2.5 billion fine. They say the problems are fixed, but is that enough?
The whole point is, who killed my daughter and all of these other people on the plane, the two planes? Boeing just says, we're generally at fault, but no details.
Do you think they're trying to hide all of the facts?
They're not trying, they are hiding all the facts. People shouldn't innocently buy an airplane ticket and then be in a flying coffin.
On a sunny March morning in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, a truly remarkable group of passengers converged on Bola International Airport. 149 passengers from 35 different countries around the world got ready to board Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, heading off to Nairobi.
It was seemingly just packed with people who were on goodwill missions of various kinds. There was a big environmental conference happening in Nairobi, a UN environmental conference.
Amongst the 149 passengers were also 9 Ethiopians, and one of them was Tamru Mulu, who is a child protection advocate.
He was a kind of person who's really passionate about life, especially children who are suffering from conflict, drought.
Also on that Ethiopian Airlines flight were 8 Americans, including 24-year-old Samia Stumo, who was raised on a Massachusetts farm by a family with a very strong tradition of activism. Samia had just started work for ThinkWell, which is a global healthcare organization.
This was her first assignment. She was going to East Africa. She, at 24, had impressed them that they sent her instead of someone, a dozen years her senior.
But not everyone on that flight was on a goodwill mission. There were also 2 brothers from California, Melvin and Bennett Riffle, on one last adventure together because Melvin was about to become a new father. Tell me how big this was for these 2 brothers to do this together. That was pretty remarkable.
I thought so. I mean,
No, I think so too. I think it's rare that 2 brothers their age would stay close enough to want to travel with each other like that.
Also on Ethiopian Air 302 that morning, a young Russian couple on vacation, Alexander Polyakov and his wife, Ekaterina.
Они очень любили путешествовать. У них мечта была сразу. Но они перво-наперво, как они хотели именно поехать в этот национальный парк в Кению, чтобы увидеть крупных кошек.
And as they got ready to board, Ekaterina posted this cell phone video on Instagram of their plane outside that was waiting for them.
In general, very few people think much about the model of the plane that they're on. And that's something that most people really don't think twice about.
In fact, it was a brand new model welcomed into the Ethiopian Airlines fleet with a lot of ceremony just months earlier, called the Boeing 737 MAX 8.
We are welcoming the state-of-the-art modern airplane, the 737 MAX 8.
It was a groundbreaking move for Ethiopian Airlines to acquire this aircraft. The fact that it was new, the fact that it uses the latest technology.
Boeing had a track record of success, and all expectations at the time were that the MAX would just be, the next big thing for the company.
But it turns out this brand new plane had a secret, unknown even to the pilots. And when it was revealed, it would not just impact Boeing in shocking and unforeseen ways, but the entire air traveling community worldwide.
Boeing is an iconic American company. They're known as the king of the sky. This is a company that's at the heart of American engineering and American manufacturing.
For Captain Sully, celebrated for successfully landing his crippled plane on New York's Hudson River, Boeing has long been the gold standard for passenger aircraft.
Boeing had a century-long history of engineering excellence, an effective culture, good leadership.
There's a saying, and it stands today: if it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. It's affirmation that Boeing has had our back for decades.
This is the 707. Boeing's prototype jet airliner, capable of speeds and altitudes which will revolutionize commercial air travel.
The 707 launches in 1958, and right off the bat, it is a huge success for Boeing. And it just so happens to be the same year that Frank Sinatra releases Come Fly With Me.
Come fly with.
It speaks to generations of people for whom getting on an airplane was something very special. And it was exotic, and it was desirable, and it was glamorous.
Air travel became sort of the vogue.
People would dress up to travel. Meals and flights were not a joke. Something that people might look forward to.
The 1960s were an extraordinary period for the company because of the 7 series of planes.
707 was the first successful jet. After that, Boeing just started building more and more, and the 727 came, the 737 came.
And then they would do the 747, the so-called Queen of the Skies, the first jumbo jet. Boeing, from that point forward, was the premier maker of passenger aircraft.
By the 1980s, Boeing is unmatched in terms of its power, its reach, and those 700s planes are it.
I mean, the company was so important to our country's economy, in part because it was the largest exporter in the world.
I mean, they manufacture Air Force One. I don't think you can get kind of any bigger than that.
But by the 1990s, Boeing started to face truly stiff competition from this European consortium called Airbus. But up until that point, Boeing hadn't really taken them all that seriously. But suddenly, they are up and coming.
They've really accelerated to become the only other, at this point, major global competitor to Boeing for commercial aircraft.
In late 2010, Airbus comes out with this new model that really shakes up the industry and puts serious pressure on Boeing to innovate.
The A320neo, a single-aisle aircraft that had new, more fuel-efficient engines that could fly farther and for cheaper.
People want to fly direct, and to do that, you need smaller, more efficient planes.
Boeing was focused on the wide-body world. Airbus beat them to the chase.
The A320neo. Damned if they didn't wind up becoming their fastest selling airliner. And then Boeing's like, well, wait, what are we going to do?
Boeing comes up with what they think is this really smart plan. Instead of developing an entirely new plane to catch up with Airbus, they decide to take a shortcut and revamp a model that's already on the market, saving them a lot of extra time and money.
That's when they said, okay, we can take another look at the next iteration of 737.
There were new engines, larger, more fuel-efficient engines being added to this aircraft.
Boeing calls this new model the 737 MAX, and they promise they're going to fly more people, it'll cost less money, use less fuel, and cost a lot less to operate.
United Airlines says it has cut a new deal with Boeing to build 150 737s for its fleet over the next 10 years, giving the aircraft manufacturer a leg up against its main competitor, Airbus.
The Boeing 737 MAX was the fastest selling airliner in Boeing history. Another ball out of the park for Boeing commercial aircraft.
You've got United and American and Southwest all lining up to buy it, along with 70 other buyers around the world.
One of the big customers early on was a young budget carrier in Indonesia called Lion Air. It was a huge deal.
Tonight's Money Matters, Boeing has finalized its biggest sale ever, a $22 billion order from Lion Air of Indonesia.
The 737 MAX 8 had been flying for 17 months without any incident, but then in October of 2018, suddenly, out of the blue, an alarming problem developed with one of Lion Air's brand new MAX planes.
They don't realize that there's something in it that could potentially be hazardous and something that pilots and co-pilots are not familiar with.
All of us are screaming like we are in a roller coaster. To be honest, I think this is my last flight and this is my last day.
Jakarta is the capital, the largest city in Indonesia, and it's a bustling metropolitan with around 10 million residents. The aviation industry was booming, especially with the increase of the middle class in Indonesia.
One of the airlines that benefited from that boom in air travel is Lion Air, an aggressive, rapidly growing budget Indonesian air carrier. In 2011, Lion Air made a huge splash buying more than 200 of Boeing's 737 MAX 8 planes.
Even the signing was overseen by then U.S. President Barack Obama.
So I want to congratulate Lion Air for their incredible success.
One of the Lion Air pilots chosen to fly the new 737 MAX was 31-year-old Bhavya Saneja. He's an Indian national whose dreams of being a pilot started when he was just a child. So can you tell me about your son?
Yes, Bob. My son was a gifted child, a blessed child. I was into aviation, and for an aviator, when the child is flying and he becomes a commander, it is a big thing, you know, it is the sort of pinnacle of your dreams.
Even though her son had over 6,000 hours of flight experience, Sangeeta says she was really concerned after learning that he wouldn't be going through pilot simulator training for the MAX.
And I said, you haven't had a simulator training, how can you go for MAX? And it is a more powerful engine. So without a simulator, how will you manage?
One of the core selling points for Boeing of the 737 MAX was you don't need pilot training in a simulator.
They were selling this to airlines as essentially just another 737 that the airline pilots could fly without learning all that much new.
It's a huge deal to not have to have simulator training for pilots for any airline. It costs money and time. It takes the pilot off of the line and flying passengers around.
Lion Air had asked Boeing about simulator training for their pilots, and Boeing dissuaded them from this.
Now, according to internal Boeing documents, one of their employees ridiculed the request in a message to a colleague saying, now, Lion Air might need a sim to fly the MAX, and maybe because of their own stupidity, I'm scrambling, trying to figure out how to unscrew this now. Idiots.
Well, they were mocking them because if Lion Air required simulator training, then other airlines would say, well, wait a minute. If they're requiring it, maybe we need it, then the whole house of cards would start to fall apart.
He said, Mom, I've been given ground training. They have given me a training on iPad. I said, what, an iPad?
So you would sit down with an iPad course, and I think there were 3 or 4 parts, and it went through a robotic voice describing what the MAX is about.
The 737 MAX has a 69-inch fan.
Did you see anything in it that looks, wow, that's substantial, we should probably do more training?
It seemed to be enough.
He trusted Boeing blindly, and that trust, you know, gave him immense confidence. He was empowered.
In October of 2018, Lion Air had a handful of the new 737 MAXes in its fleet, and one of the aircraft was going to be departing from Bali with crew and passengers.
For me,
me and my colleague in office, we went to Bali about October 2018. Bali is amazing for holiday, especially in Asia.
Lion Air Flight JT043 was scheduled to take off from Bali to Jakarta.
The flight was quite full of passengers, and most of them are local or domestic tourists like me. It's around 7 or 10 minutes after the takeoff, the flight suddenly feels like a fall down.
It was a dive, a steep drop, 200 feet, and it wasn't something that was just caused by turbulence.
All of us are screaming like we are in a roller coaster.
How many times did it go up and down?
Up and down 4 times.
4 times?
Yes, the flight attendant who was sitting in the back, they could feel it up and down in extreme way.
When an aircraft is pitching aggressively downward like this aircraft was, and it may feel as if your stomach is coming up into your throat basically, but then comes the positive G's. It'll squash you down into your seat.
To be honest, I think it's almost like this is my last flight and this is my last day.
It just so happened there was a third pilot traveling on the plane, and he steps in and helps them get control of the situation.
Until it's landed to the airport, I can hear everyone like say, so relief. Some of the passengers are Muslim. I can hear that say, Alhamdulillah, thanks God. I cannot say it in a word. It's really relief. Yeah, I still feel a little bit shaky until now about that.
The pilots were able to control it. They knew they had a problem, but they didn't understand exactly what the nature of the problem was.
After the flight successfully landed in Jakarta, the pilots logged that they'd had some issues, but they'd left a lot of gaps in understanding what had happened on that flight.
That left the next crew in the dark about potential problems with the aircraft.
The very next day, Captain Suneja is assigned to an early morning flight out of Jakarta on that same 737 MAX, but he was given an incomplete report about what happened to that plane the previous night.
These are 2 different flights, but the same exact plane. So it's something that spells disaster.
October 29th, 2018, at the airport in Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, Lion Air Flight 610 was getting ready to take off. Its destination was the city of Pangkal Pinang, which is located on the Indonesian island of Bangka.
There was 189 people on board, 181 passengers, 2 pilots, and 6 crew members.
One of the passengers was Miss Fiona Ayuzan. She was a businesswoman, 29 years old. She was flying back to Bangka for work.
Bawain kopi ya Pak? Gitu. Karena saya suka kopi Bangka.
Pas pulang ke rumah, Mama bilang sekolah yang benar, terus dikasih uang jajan. Terus kalau besok paginya udah nggak ngeliat, soalnya udah berangkat duluan mamanya.
There was also another passenger by the name of Fendi Cristanto. He was flying to Bangka on a business trip and also on a personal trip. His father just passed away.
Karena dia mau mengikuti sembahyang bersama dengan keluarganya untuk sembahyang orang tuanya. Pulang mau ngikutin sembahyang yang ke-21 hari.
One of the passengers shot some video as they were boarding the flight. No one on board, including the pilots, had any idea that this very same plane suffered a near catastrophe in the air just the previous day. And on that video, you can see the brand new 737 MAX out the window.
Lion Air Flight 610 on that same 737 MAX is taking off from Jakarta. Very shortly after the flight takes off, the pilots are struggling with the plane.
The stick shaker pops off. It is loud and it is rattling in the captain's hands. There are a cacophony, a tidal wave of other distracting alerts. Airspeed disagree, altitude disagree.
Hold up! Hold up! Just 10 minutes later, around 6:30 in the morning, a tugboat captain was out on the Java Sea, just east of Jakarta.
Saya merasakan ada sesuatu benda yang jatuh. Nah, di situ dalam hitungan detik terdengar dentuman cukup keras.
Apa itu?
Jadi saya menghubungi Jakarta Radio.
Iya,
itu telah terjadi pesawat jatuh.
The crash site, it is about 25 miles from Jakarta seaport. On my way to the crash site, really, I pray to God. I had great expectation that everybody still alive. Arriving on scene, when I saw the debris, the small pieces of fuselage, I lost my hope.
Kalau di dalam, kebanyakan itu hampir sama dengan yang ada di permukaan, karena yang ada di dasar laut, di kedalaman itu adalah potongan-potongan tubuh ataupun bagian-bagian pesawat, entah itu serpihan, kursi.
Presiden Direktur Lion Air Edward.
When news of the crash broke, I immediately flew in from Beijing, where I was based at the time. So the sun has just gone down, and you can see all the police officers along this dock. After arriving in Jakarta, our team headed out straight to the docks where the wreckage from the plane was being brought in. Whether it crashed or what happened, we still don't even know. But these crews have been pulling up and carrying out debris piece by piece. By the next day, the family members of the passengers were gathering and anxiously really waiting for word on whether their loved ones had survived the crash. Among the family members that I got the chance to talk to was the wife of that passenger who took that video of himself boarding onto the Lion airplane just minutes before it crashed. Your husband actually was taking video of the others getting on the plane when he got on?
Yeah.
Yes. Can you show that to us? These are a lot of the other passengers that were on the plane?
Yeah.
Is there still some hope that there are survivors?
Yeah, we do believe that God still control, and we still have some hope that they can find him alive.
It was clear pretty quickly that the plane had flown into the sea, at full speed, and came apart with such force that there was no way anyone could have survived.
Berdoa buat cepet ketemu gitu. Berdoa biar tetap selamat, tapi nggak selamat gitu.
Karena benar-benar saya kerasa kehilangan.
Hubungan antara Fiona dengan ibunya ini sangat dekat. Nah, begitu mendengar kecelakaan itu benar-benar down sekali, benar-benar shock, down. Jadi satu hari setelah pesawat jatuh, mendengar kabar ibu yang meninggal.
Fendi left behind a wife and 4 children. The youngest was 5 years old.
Jujur ya Bu, suami saya itu kalau naik pesawat itu memang sangat khawatir. Dia itu paling takut kalau naik, dengan rasa ketakutan yang dia alami gitu loh.
At the time, very little was understood about what might have happened. Brand new plane, nice enough day, nothing in particular that would point to an immediate cause of this accident.
This is a fairly new plane. The 737 MAX had only 800 flight hours.
But it turns out there was a hidden danger on that plane. A flight control system that Boeing did not even tell the pilots about.
There was nothing in the manuals that alerted the pilots to the existence of this new system that was placed on the MAX.
Hold up.
It has one mission, and that's to drive the nose down.
Terrain.
And it will not stop.
Hold up.
Who was given the power to try to kill them, essentially, until it finally succeeded.
Hold up.
Devastating plane crash in Indonesia.
Lion Air jet with 189 people on board fell into the sea minutes after takeoff, leaving no survivors.
So far, 24 body bags have been delivered. The jet was a new Boeing 737.
I gotta say, my first thoughts were, boy, it's a brand new airplane. It must have been bad maintenance, or it must have been pilot error.
A lot of Indonesians initially just saw that it was Lion Air fault.
ABC's David Curley has the story. Good morning, David.
George, the real thing that we need to find are those two black boxes, which will yield a lot of answers to all these questions.
The National Transport Safety Committee found the flight data recorder on the 1st of November. It was just only 3 days after the crash.
As they look at the contents of the flight data recorder, it becomes clear that something had gone terribly wrong. The pilots are struggling with the plane, almost in a tug of war.
When we found the black box, we found that the aircraft was pitching up and then down, down and up, and down and up. It's up and down for about 24 times.
Had you ever seen anything quite like this?
I never knew any case of the aircraft can fly up and down like this. I knew that the pilot was fighting with the aircraft.
It would have been a terrifying roller coaster ride. During that time period, the passengers would have, of course, been hysterical. Things would have been flying in the cabin. Computers, laptops, phones would have been flying around. People would have been screaming.
It was a clear weather, so they could see the sea. And I think it will be very scary for everyone in the cabin to see outside, to feel the speed.
Menit atau berapa itu? Rasa ketakutannya sangat amat.
Yakin saat itu dia sangat takut sekali, Bu, dengan pesawat yang goyang seperti itu. Saya bisa ngerasain juga.
When the cockpit recorder was eventually recovered, it was revealed that pilots were rifling through the pilot manual, trying to apparently figure out what to do.
They're turning the pages to find out what the hell it is, why the aircraft is going down.
They start shouting about which procedure should do. They knew that they were having serious problems, and they just screamed in the name of God.
That point of time, that only pain he must have felt was the sense of failure, that he's not able to save others. Except that he was a brave child, you know.
Be surprised. It's very strange that the aircraft doing that way. Then we asked Boeing what kind of system that may create this way.
What Boeing revealed to investigators came as a complete surprise. It turns out that Boeing had installed a flight control system on the 737 MAX that had the power to take control of the plane from the pilots without them even knowing about it. The program was called MCAS.
MCAS, Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, and that this system, under certain circumstances, can trigger in such a way that it will cause the airplane to nose down.
Why did Boeing put this MCAS system? What was it for? It's a mystery not only for us, but also for the pilot and co-pilot on board the plane.
So the reason they put MCAS on the airplane was because they put these brand new huge engines on an old airframe.
In order to have sufficient ground clearance, they moved the engine further up above the leading edge of the wing and further forward, and that changed the way the airplane flew.
And this effect of the engines came in and the airplane starts to want to pitch up all by itself. The idea was to provide something that would offset that pitching moment or causing the nose to come up.
When the plane computers think the plane is in danger of a stall, so in very basic terms, MCAS pushes the plane's nose down by automatically triggering the rear horizontal stabilizer.
So the MCAS is there to correct what MCAS thinks is wrong.
Right.
The pilots have no idea why this plane is going down against their will.
Yes.
So they try to fight it back.
Yes. One of the most fundamental muscle memory things a pilot knows how to do. If the nose goes down too far, you pull it back and you trim. And this battle goes back and forth a couple of dozen times.
So it was MCAS, it was the computer against the pilot.
Yes, and the way MCAS was designed, it was given the control authority to do it as many times as necessary. In other words, it was given the power to try to kill them, essentially, until it finally succeeded.
Boeing's revelations about the MCAS system and what caused it to activate on the Lion Air flight in the first place would cause an uproar in the pilot community, and it would all lead to a secretly taped meeting where Boeing was recorded telling pilots that MCAS was being fixed.
Those are going to be relatively straightforward software changes that we expect to do for a short period of time. We want to make sure we're fixing the right things.
But while that was happening, the plane would continue to fly.
They were rolling the dice with the lives of the global traveling public.
Safety warning from Boeing about their brand new 737 jets after that deadly crash in Indonesia. Now concerns about a feature that could malfunction, causing planes to abruptly dive.
A week after the Lion Air crash, Boeing issued a safety bulletin to the airlines, finally revealing the existence of a flight control system on the 737 MAX that could unexpectedly force the plane's nose down.
It's an admission by the company that there is a potential glitch in its newest aircraft.
Just a few days later, Boeing tells operators for the first time that there's a new and previously undisclosed system on the aircraft. And that is MCAS.
That was a shock. It's not in our manuals at all, except in one section, our abbreviation section. We didn't know what MCAS meant. It meant nothing to us.
But there was another critical question to be answered. What caused MCAS to force the nose of the Lion Air plane down in the first place? The plane was flying normally, so why did MCAS activate?
Among a lot of surprises was that MCAS was triggered by a faulty angle of attack indicator, which is a relatively innocuous piece of equipment on the side of the airplane.
The angle of attack sensor was feeding incorrect data about the angle of the plane's nose.
It was telling the plane that it was, approaching a stall situation, that its nose was pitched up.
So the plane thought that the nose was angled too high, when in fact it wasn't.
And that MCAS needed to come in and push the nose back down.
And there was a further revelation about MCAS that took investigators by complete surprise. Even though there are two angle of attack sensors on the 737 MAX, MCAS only relied on one of them.
It's a lack of redundancy that appears to my mind to be unacceptable in airplane design, because the AOA indicator is susceptible to damage. It's not a robust piece of equipment.
A single point of failure hooked to a safety critical system, you just don't do that. It's crazy.
The bottom line here is the 737 MAX is safe, and the safety is a core value for us at Boeing.
Boeing CEO Dennis Muhlenberg went on Fox Business to reassure the public that a bulletin had been sent to all the airlines instructing pilots exactly what to do if there was another emergency situation involving the 737 MAX.
We've already issued a couple of additional bulletins that point them back to existing flight procedures to handle that kind of condition.
So Boeing is telling the pilots that one of their options is to simply turn off the power supply to the electric motor on the stabilizer. That's the piece that pivots up and down and controls the nose of the aircraft.
Boeing pointed out that the pilots on that previous Lion Air flight who overcame a mid-air emergency involving MCAS had followed the appropriate procedure by turning off power to the stabilizer. That was a step the pilots on the fatal flight did not take.
That was perceived to be an indirect way of blaming the airline and blaming the pilots without also acknowledging design shortcomings of the system.
It emotionally tore me apart, as if I was blamed for him being the pilot. I was blamed for killing all the people, mothering a son who could not take care of his passengers.
Pilots were furious. Pilot unions asked Boeing, why didn't you tell us if you put something on the airplane that's going to actually interfere with my job?
Late November, about a month after the accident, 4 Boeing executives traveled to the headquarters of the Allied Pilots Association, the union that represents pilots at American Airlines.
That meeting was secretly recorded by the head of the pilots union.
Our president at the time wanted to make sure we knew exactly what was said.
We flat out deserve to know what is on our airplanes. I don't disagree.
I don't know that understanding the system would have changed the outcome of this. We try not to overload the crews with information that's unnecessary so they actually know the information that we believe is important.
It enraged us. Boeing always gives you the information. They don't parcel it out.
We're working with the FAA right now to try to figure out what software changes we might make to eliminate the failure conditions that we experienced at that point.
They said, well, we're going to correct the software. All the things that you brought up.
Those are going to be relatively straightforward software changes that we expect we can get out in a fairly short period of time. Weeks, not a year, but a couple, maybe 6 weeks-ish.
The question I have is, do you feel comfortable that the situation is under control today before any software fixes are implemented?
Absolutely.
They were taking a gamble with keeping that in the air. They had such a big bet on the 737 MAX. They had staked their reputation. They had staked their financial future on it.
4 months after that Lion Air crash, the 737 MAX is still flying all over the world. Meanwhile, 149 people are saying their goodbyes as they prepare to board that Ethiopian Airlines flight to Kenya. Among them, young Samia Stumo, who had just flown in from DC and was transiting to Nairobi for her assignment with her global health care organization.
I guess she had landed in Ethiopia, and I said safe travels with a bunch of exclamation points, and she said thanks, boo.
We didn't know that there was an issue with the plane. We thought that the problem that happened in Indonesia was because of a problem with that airlines or the pilots or maintenance or something.
Because the Lion Air crash happened in the other side of the world, maybe they didn't understand the danger that they were walking into.
Samia, where are you? Where are you, Samia?
Boeing killed my daughter. We're not afraid of anybody. The bottom line here is the 737 MAX is safe.
It may be now, many people think, but can that ever make up for the lives that were lost in 2 crashes? Even with Boeing now accepting responsibility.
Do the people that should be accountable
for what happened? Are they being punished?
No, absolutely not.
We flat out deserve to know what is on their airplanes.
The nose is pointing down and it's over.
Boeing 737 MAX 8 crashing to Earth just 6 minutes after takeoff.
There was not a plane there. There was a hole in the ground.
The pilots have no idea why this plane is going down against their will.
Pilots were furious. Why didn't you tell us if you put something on the airplane that's going to actually interfere with my job?
What I want and what the whole public wants is accountability.
The Berkshires are in western Massachusetts, at the very far western end of the state, right up against the New York state line. The Stumos live in a town called Sheffield, and it's an absolutely lovely spot. It's quite a large farm, and it has this unbelievable view of the mountain range just to the west.
You can see the lower field is a cornfield.
How much land is there here?
180 acres.
Nadia Milleron and her husband Michael Stumo moved to this farm after a career as attorneys and advocates in Winston, Connecticut. That's also the home of the brother of Nadia's mom, perhaps the most famous consumer rights activist in American history.
The standard can be considered so inadequate that it is deemed illegal for the consumer interest.
Nadia's uncle is Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader became famous through his activism in Washington and this whole war on auto safety and all the rest.
I think he's had a big influence in both of our lives in terms of trying to make better things happen.
Nadia and Michael had 3 sons and 1 daughter who they named Samia.
She was a force of nature. She was just, she was, beautiful, intelligent, charismatic. She could just light up a room. But around here, she raised pigs. She would sell the meat to the neighbors. If she decided you needed to buy her pork, you were going to buy her pork.
Samia very much absorbed the family ethic that you were supposed to use your time well, you develop your skills. She became very good at her instrument, which for her was cello. Watching Samia, you got the sense of someone who had really kind of brought together all these strains in the family, starting with Uncle Ralph and his activism, and then through her own parents.
Definitely he influenced Samia tremendously because she was out there at 9 years old campaigning for his presidential campaign. They made her cry. Your mother shouldn't allow you to be out here, and Ralph Nader is spoiling the election, and she understood the issues and she talked right back at them.
She had leadership written all over her. She had compassion in an intellectually rigorous way. Everybody loved her.
One pivotal moment in young Samia's life that fueled her drive to change the world was the tragic childhood death of her brother Nels.
He was diagnosed with cancer at 15, 16 months of age, and he ended up not making it. He died a little over 2 years old. We only have one picture with him. With all 4 kids.
Did she ever tell you that part of her motivation and dream to get into medicine was because of what happened to Nels?
Yeah, she did. She believed that, her calling was healthcare, and I think that was partially a result of her exposure to her brother's illness.
Samia went to the University of Massachusetts and then managed to get a full ride scholarship for a public health master's program at the University of Copenhagen.
Everybody liked her, but she was very firm in her beliefs. It really kind of forced you to think about what you said, think about what you believe, and defend it.
When I met Samia, I was really shy to talk to people. We just would go on these fun adventures. It just helped me be more fearless.
She had this knack of making you feel as fascinating as she was.
In January 2019, Samia had landed a dream job in Washington, D.C. with a global public health organization called ThinkWell.
Just a few months into her new job at ThinkWell, Samia gets her first assignment to go overseas. They were going to send her over to East Africa in March of 2019, where she was going to help set up some new offices.
This is the kind of thing that a relatively seasoned person is usually put into, and someone like Samuel, without much experience in this, we were just so blown away by her that we felt that she had the acumen to be able to figure this out.
As Samia got ready for her Africa trip, perhaps the last thing on her mind was the tragic crash in Indonesia just a few months earlier of a Boeing 737 MAX plane, killing everyone on board.
And now we're going to turn to that chilling report about the Lion Air crash. From the moment the flight took off, pilots fought a tug-of-war with an automated system that repeatedly pushed the jet's nose down.
After the crash, concerns had been raised about a new flight control system Boeing had installed on the plane called MCAS.
Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. This system, under certain circumstances, can trigger in such a way that it will cause the airplane to nose down, independent of the pilot's judgment.
It turns out there was a defective sensor on that Lion Air plane that accidentally triggered MCAS to activate and caused the plane to repeatedly go into a dive before it finally crashed.
After Lion Air, there was not a lot of urgency. I think it was sort of easy to dismiss it as a one-off. I would say it pretty quickly faded from view for the majority of the traveling public.
On March 10, 2019, Samia left D.C. for Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where she would be transferring to another plane on her way to her assignment in Kenya.
So there's 149 travelers from around the world, and they're about to get on the newest Boeing airliner, the 737 MAX. They have no idea of the danger.
On March 10th, 2019, Samia Stumo had just arrived in the Ethiopian Addis Ababa after a long flight from Washington, D.C.
When I woke up, I just looked at the message and it said 2 more hours to Nairobi.
There were 149 passengers on that flight from 35 countries, most of them heading to Nairobi for a UN conference.
Also, at Gate 12 in Terminal 2, those 2 brothers from California, Melvin and Bennett Riffle, who were enjoying a globe-trotting jaunt together before the birth of Melvin's daughter.
When we said goodbye, he gave me a kiss and gave me a kiss on the stomach for Emma. You know, and he was all excited but nervous. There were also this young Russian couple who posted a video on Instagram showing the 737 MAX, a brand new aircraft.
Unlike the pilots involved in that Indonesian crash, the Ethiopian Airlines pilots knew about Boeing's MCAS flight control system. And Boeing had actually sent a directive to airlines instructing pilots what to do if a plane went into a sudden dive on its own.
So Boeing is telling the pilot to turn off the power supply to the electric motor on the stabilizer. That's the piece that pivots up and down and controls the nose of the aircraft.
It was a bright Sunday morning. The plane took off at 8:30. And 3 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft started behaving erratically.
Their instruments start to show different readings.
After 6 minutes later, the plane was spotted again about 30 miles from Addis in a small town called Bishoftu.
Tashkarakaru Dubani Yumboba. Dubani Boba, Ara Dufe Durani, Matasol Kala, Yerola Vodogon, Sagale Puttani, Harakutab Sameturke.
Immediately drive to the Ethiopian Airlines compound. There were family members, people were crying, and some of them holding their head, and it was so horrifying to see them.
An hour earlier or something, I talked to him, and it just didn't feel right.
I don't know, I was trying to deny that it happened, or it's true, or somehow he has been spared.
We start in Ethiopia, where around 157 people are feared dead after a plane crashed early on Sunday.
Within, I think it was 2.5 hours or 3 hours, we were on a plane headed to Addis Ababa. This dirt road takes you to the field where that crash site is. So finally, after almost 3.5 hours, that we arrive at the crash site, and it's splayed out in the fields. Right next to the debris field, you have the smell of jet fuel intermingled with the smell of death. And you can see those workers picking through everything, trying to ensure that they don't miss any key parts of the plane. The plane came down at such an enormous rate of speed, basically as fast as a cruise missile flies, that it essentially disintegrated into that hole. You can tell how violent that impact was, how shredded these metal components are. But you also have to remember that there is more difficult work here for a lot of these workers here, and that is dealing with the people who are on these planes. And everywhere you go, you see shredded bags and personal effects.
Breaking news, an Ethiopian Airlines flight has crashed.
With victims from 35 different countries on board, grief resonates all around the world, including in a small seaside town in Russia.
Ну, просто очень обидно, когда такие дети на взлете, так сказать, и на взлете своей карьеры, на взлете всего погибают.
In the northern California town of Redding, a phone rings in the Riffle home.
It was the embassy in Ethiopia. I said, I know why you're calling. They said, both boys. And I said, it was.
It's something you can't believe when you hear it. It's just like you're in a nightmare or something, and it's just totally unbelievable.
It's one thing to lose one of your children, and you lost both.
Yeah. Lost her family. And we had help Brittany.
They said, please don't tell me my husband's dead. And Susan said, both of them. And I just collapsed. What do I do now? I'm pregnant. What do I do? Our baby. What do I do now?
And word of the terrible crash also travels to a family farm nestled in the Berkshires in Massachusetts.
They turned on the BBC. It said that a plane had crashed. I remember I couldn't breathe. Then I woke up, Michael, and he told me, what are you talking about? That's impossible. That's what he told me.
My sister is not going to die in the crash. It doesn't fit into your world. And we thought, oh, well, maybe she survived. We needed to get to Ethiopia right away to help her. We had to be there. And we had to protect her.
We got in a car and we headed for JFK. Got on the flight, and along the way, along our journey, we learned that there were no survivors because we kept looking at the news.
Like Nadia and Michael, many grief-stricken families made their way to the crash site, desperate to find any trace of their loved ones.
You know, there was not a plane there. There was a hole in the ground.
Anybody able to find the body remains?
There was nothing bigger than a femur bone.
The black box data now in the hands of Ethiopian officials.
As the investigation continued and the cause of the crash, there was a question on many people's minds. Would Boeing 737 MAX plane be implicated in a fatal tragedy again?
The Boeing
737 MAX 8, crashing to Earth just 6 minutes after takeoff in Ethiopia.
First Indonesia, now Ethiopia.
The big question here is, does the same thing happen?
The flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder were recovered the next day, and it didn't take long for investigators to conclude that there were similarities.
The faulty angle of attack sensor triggered the activation of MCAS right after takeoff, and that is almost exactly what happened on the Lion Air aircraft.
What was heard on the cockpit voice recorder, the first officer saying, pitch up, pitch up, pitch up, while the MCAS was kicking and nosediving the aircraft. It was so difficult for them to keep the aircraft under control.
Despite similarities between the two crashes, this time there was a huge difference. Not only the Ethiopian Airlines pilots knew about MCAS, they also followed Boeing's instruction on how to disable it.
The crew performed all the procedures repeatedly provided by the manufacturer, but was not able to control the aircraft.
This was actually pretty shocking because Boeing had been suggesting that overcoming an erroneous MCAS activation was pretty straightforward. If that was the case, why did this second accident happen?
To better understand why those pilots could not recover control of the plane, we asked two experienced American Airlines pilots and members of the Allied Pilots Association to take us through what might have occurred in that Ethiopian Airlines cockpit based on information from the black boxes. So in here, what will we see?
In this airplane, while it is not a MAX, the displays are very similar. But what's unique about the MAX in this case is the MCAS.
I'll be kind of simulating the MCAS with my electric trim switch to show what the MCAS would be doing.
So now we're going to take off from the capital of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, heading to Kenya. Yep. Shortly after the takeoff, faulty data from the plane's angle of attack sensor triggers a myriad of false alerts in that cockpit.
Seconds after you take off.
Altitude disagree, airspeed disagree.
Grab the stick shaker is shaking continuously, very loud. This will not stop throughout the entire flight.
In the middle of all these distractions, MCAS suddenly activates.
MCAS is firing. Starts to push the nose down. I'm pulling back. And then I trim up. Get a little bit of trim up on it. The MCAS kicks in again. The MCAS is more powerful and fast than what the pilot can do. So it'll always win more.
It was at this point that the Ethiopian Airlines pilots followed Boeing's instructions and cut off electronic power to the stabilizer in the plane's tail. So you realize that MCAS is not working.
But the problem now is that the nose is so far down, they're having trouble
holding it back, yeah.
MCAS had left the plane in such a precarious position that the pilots did not have the physical strength to manually pull it out of that deep dive.
Now the stick is getting very, very heavy. So the captain says, pull with me, which is basically saying, help me. I've got a lot of weight on this, but I have no trim to do it. I go, okay, manual trim.
And I'm trying, but it's not working.
I can't hold it back.
Unable to control the plane manually, in a last-ditch effort, the Ethiopian pilots decided to turn the electronic stabilizer system back on.
The MCAS fires, and this fire goes and goes. I'm pulling back, a little bit of trim. And now the nose is pointing down and it's over. Stop the sim. They're headed toward the ground. They turn those switches back on, which is not in a checklist, but welcome to the battlefield. You're staring at the ground and you don't know what else to do.
Do you ever think about what goes through the mind and the heart of pilots when the plane is going down?
Yes, I don't like to think about that. I think that's everyone's worst nightmare.
It's hard. But they fought. They fought. They did what pilots do. The system let them down. The system let them down.
Unlike with Lion Air, the Ethiopian air crash has sudden and swift repercussions for Boeing. Ethiopian Air immediately grounds their entire MAX fleet, and like a domino effect, countries around the world start grounding their fleets.
All of us at Boeing are deeply sorry for the loss of life in the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 and Lion Air Flight 610 accidents.
Boeing was saying that they were working on adding safeguards to MCAS to make a safe airplane even safer.
Would the accident have happened without MCAS, though? You call it a link.
It's a chain of events, right? There is no singular item, it's a chain of events.
But what you came up with in the end was flawed, was it not?
We've designed the MAX to have the flying qualities that were desired in the hands of the pilots. The MCAS system is part of that design effort.
Corporations always see profit, always see brand protection. They will not easily admit their wrongdoing, even where it is very evident. And that was the case with Boeing at that particular time.
346 people died. Can you answer a few questions here about that?
He's sorry that we lost our family members. He doesn't take any accountability for having caused their deaths.
If Boeing thought that Nadia and Michael and the other victims' families were going to just quietly go away and not try to hold the company accountable, they could not have been more wrong.
It was amazing to behold these two people from this farm in western Massachusetts coming down to take on really one of the biggest corporations in the world.
Mr. Stumo, thank you for your presence today.
Boeing killed my daughter. We're not afraid of anybody.
In the fall of 2019, Nadia went back to Ethiopia. After months of digging and searching, workers had actually been able to find some remains from the crash. And Nadia brought back those remains, and they actually included some artifacts.
We got back Samia's business journal, which talks about her plans. We got back her passport. This is a business blouse that she took with her, and it all smells of jet fuel. They fill the room with the smell. I mean, to me, it's the smell of death.
I don't want other mothers and other families to go through this. I don't want them to be trying to hear their daughter's voice and, wonder what you would say to them. So that's why it's important to work on aviation safety. Because people shouldn't innocently buy an airplane ticket and then be in a flying coffin.
While Nadia and her husband Michael were consumed by grief, they were able to quickly turn their anguish into action against Boeing.
The family of Samia Stumo shares their pain so that others don't feel the same.
Michael and Nadia fly to Chicago and file the first lawsuit against Boeing by an American family.
I want her death not to be in vain. I don't want anybody else to die.
Nadia and Michael, along with more than 100 other families of victims around the world, alleged that MAX had a defective design and that Boeing issued inadequate warnings about the plane, something that Boeing denied at the time.
This is going to go down as one of the most callous, deliberate efforts to keep a product in the public domain for the wrong reasons.
What really shocks me is their greed. I don't know how they can still, sleep at night.
But there was a second front in Nadia and Michael's battle against Boeing. They and the other families were determined to take part in the congressional hearings into what went wrong with the 737 MAX and make sure that another crash never happened again.
We have 3 generations of farm advocacy in my family, and Nadia, of course, has, Ralph Nader and her family and that advocacy.
People should not fly this plane if it's ungrounded.
My uncle said to us practical things.
To never settle for staff, always go for the top.
I feel like it's cruel irony. Samuel's family knew how to do it because it's a very complicated system to navigate, and it's a fight.
Nadia has really been a principal support for many of the other families out there, while Michael is pursuing the more, what's the fix and what went wrong. As we go forward, this committee will leave no stone unturned.
We kept saying you can't just have the bureaucrats and the engineers and the pilots. It's all about the families.
Today, I speak not only with my voice, but the voices of my departed family.
Paul Girogi testified.
He had lost his entire family.
I think about their last 6 minutes a lot. My wife and my mom-in-law knew they were going to die. They had to somehow comfort the children during those final moments, knowing they were all their last. I wish I was there with them.
At the congressional hearings, there was some talk that foreign pilots failed to respond appropriately.
For me, the action report reaffirms my belief that pilots trained in the United States would have successfully been able to handle this situation.
Chair now recognizes Captain Chelsea B. Sullenberger III.
That claim was called out after the dramatic appearance of perhaps the most famous pilot in America, Chesley Sullenberger.
I'm one of a relatively small group of people who've experienced such a crisis and lived to share what we learned about it.
Sully was the miracle on the Hudson pilot. He successfully landed his plane on New York's Hudson River after a bird strike crippled his engines. Captain Sullenberger became a national hero, immortalized by Tom Hanks in the movie Sully.
Like many pilots, I was disappointed that many were blaming the dead crews of the accident flights. I've got to tell you from first-hand experience how real and how intense the startled factor is. I recently experienced all these warnings in a 737 MAX flight simulator during recreations of the accident flights. Even knowing what was going to happen, I could see how crews could have run out of time before they could have solved the problems.
Boeing, built into their design of MCAS sort of an assumption that pilots would be able to react to something going wrong within 4 seconds.
Well, think about that. Let's start the clock. Now. 2, 3. That's it. It's just really unlikely almost any airline crew would have acted effectively that fast. These accidents should never have happened. And I'm really distressed that they happened.
But the investigation into Boeing would go much deeper, raising questions about whether Boeing knew about problems with the MAX before they put it in the air.
The information coming out of the investigation is shocking.
And it would all lead to a face-to-face confrontation between a grieving mother from a farm and the head of one of the most powerful companies in the world.
And I want to, confront a situation, but I want to say it to you directly because I don't think you understand what we're saying.
Things that are coming out of the investigation are shocking. Shocking about what Boeing knew and what it was saying internally.
The House investigation concluded that the safety of the flying public was put into jeopardy by Boeing's pressure to compete with Airbus.
The committee uncovered emails and communications showing that there had been lower-level employees who raised questions several times about MCAS.
In an internal email, a Boeing engineer wrote about that problem that triggered MCAS in both plane crashes, saying, "Are we vulnerable to single sensor failures with the MCAS implementation?" This is back in 2015, asking about the vulnerability of these particular devices.
Yeah, they're setting my daughter up to die in 2019. These are questions of life and death. But that's not how they treated them in the company.
House investigators released documents they had obtained from inside Boeing showing that their own training pilots had a very dismissive attitude towards regulators and customers.
regulators. One Boeing employee who emerged as a central figure in the investigation was Chief Technical Pilot Mark Fortner, who became well known in the media after his emails became public.
Mark Fortner was the one who asked regulators whether they could remove any mention of MCAS from the flight crew operations manual. Fortner, in some of the emails and instant messages, was kind of gloating at his ability to, as he said, Jedi mind trick regulators.
In fact, it was Fortner who wrote that instant message to a colleague, mocking Lion Air for their stupidity in requesting simulator training, referring to them as idiots.
His emails were shocking, but they're just the tip of the iceberg of the failure of the safety culture at Boeing.
Some Boeing employees openly questioned the safety culture of the company during development of the 737 MAX. In one email, a worker said, "This airplane is designed by clowns, who in turn are supervised by monkeys." Another Boeing employee wrote, "Frankly, right now all my internal warning bells are going off, and for the first time in my life, I'm sorry to say that I'm hesitant about putting my family on a Boeing airplane."
The safety cult eviscerated under production pressure.
For the first time, and on tonight's one-year anniversary of the first 737 MAX crash, Boeing CEO Dennis Muhlenberg faced Congress.
For Nadia, Michael, and the other families, the person they really wanted answers from was the man in charge of Boeing.
When Dennis Muhlenberg comes to Washington to testify, it's a really big moment.
I've met with the families, but they keep faces of their loved ones in people's mind. They're not going to be forgotten.
I too would like to acknowledge the families that are here with us today. And again, wanted to tell you I'm sorry. We are deeply, deeply sorry. We'll never forget.
He was just saying words for the camera. They never tried to reach the families personally.
Who bears the principal responsibility at Boeing for the cascading events that resulted in the crash of Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302?
Mr. Chairman, my company and I are responsible. We're responsible for our airplanes. And we know there are things we need to improve. I'd grown up on a farm in Iowa. My parents taught me the value of hard work and integrity.
To do the aw shucks Iowa farm boy thing, I'm an Iowa farm boy. It doesn't cut it with me. It was grating.
As I finally get to ask it another time, when you talked about Iowa just like one too many times, and the whole group said, "Go back to the farm. Go back to Iowa. Do that." You're not the person anymore to solve the situation. But I want to say it to you directly because I don't think you understand what we're saying.
I respect that. I really do. In the end, it's about safety, and
you're not capable of doing that.
I respect your inputs there. Just tell you, we are very focused on safety.
I wanted to pierce through to the human being. Imagine being in our shoes.
Just a couple months after the House hearing, Muhlenberg was forced out as CEO of Boeing.
But while Muhlenberg may be gone, the clouds of suspicion over Boeing remain.
And the Justice Department is investigating, and hopefully some people are going to go to jail.
We're going to turn now to the 737 MAX jet. It's making its first passenger flight since 2 deadly crashes.
The Boeing 737 MAX is flying around the world. Airlines have started flying it again. The question that some air travelers may have is it now safe to fly?
Tonight, Boeing 737 MAX jets are back in service. American Airlines today flying the first paying passengers in the U.S. since the fleet was grounded nearly 2 years ago.
The 737 MAX is back in action. Airlines are choosing to put the 737 MAXs back in the air. They waited a long time for that airplane.
I have the utmost confidence in the safety
was aircraft. I didn't feel unsafe at all getting on the plane today.
Last November, the FAA cleared the 737 MAX to fly again after Boeing agreed to make several changes to the plane. MCAS now needs both angle of attack indicators to be in agreement in order to trigger, and it can only be fired once. MCAS will no longer be able to put the plane in the dramatic nosedive position that it did in the fatal accidents, and pilots are required to have simulator training.
I do think the 737 is a safe airplane. I'm happy to fly on the 737. I have no issue about that. And I think it's going to be a great airplane. I really do.
Now that these MAX planes are up in the air again, what do you think about what's happened?
The MAX plane is still dangerous. I know definitely that the planes are still unsafe and I can't get on this plane.
But while Boeing may have successfully relaunched the 737 MAX, there is still the question about whether the company will be held accountable for those two fatal crashes of the plane.
The Justice Department has launched a criminal investigation into the plane's development.
The criminal investigation began before the second accident. It began in 2018.
Prosecutors were trying to find whether or not Boeing had lied to the FAA. They spoke to, obviously, a number of Boeing employees.
But to the shock and dismay of the victims' families, this January, the Department of Justice suddenly announced that it was allowing Boeing to resolve the criminal case. In exchange, the company acknowledged that it engaged in a conspiracy to defraud the United States.
Boeing will pay $2.5 billion in a settlement over its 737 MAX planes.
You have to pay a very large financial penalty, $2.5 billion, but you never have a criminal conviction. The airlines get $1.77 billion. The victims who died in these two crashes and their heirs are getting $500 million. The only fine here that goes to the government is less than 10%.
I was just outraged. How is it that Boeing cannot be held to account by our justice system?
And the agreement seems to allow Boeing off the hook. It states the misconduct was neither pervasive across the organization, nor undertaken by a large number of employees, nor facilitated by senior management.
I find it interesting that the prosecutor says there's no pervasive wrongdoing at Boeing. Meanwhile, the House committee investigating the 737 MAX disasters finds people went to Boeing with their concerns about safety, and those concerns were not heeded.
Former Boeing test pilot is expected to face criminal charges in connection with the safety probe.
The only criminal charge resulting from the DOJ investigation is against Mark Forkner. He's the chief technical pilot for Boeing who wrote those emails about tricking the FAA.
So Forkner is the one on the frying pan right now, and the only one on the frying pan.
Forkner was charged with deceiving safety regulators and faces decades in prison if convicted. He has pled not guilty.
This tragedy deserved a search for the truth, not a search for a scapegoat. The truth will show that Mark did not cause this tragedy, Mark did not lie, and Mark should not be charged.
He did something terribly wrong, supported by the company he was working for. I hope that Mark Forkner's attorney will prevail in showing how many people were involved in this.
People read about air accidents and they think about the victims and they think, oh, geez, that's so sad. That's so sad, and it is. But I think what goes unappreciated is the fury of someone who must see that they've lost a loved one or many loved ones, and the culpability lies right there, and they will never get that justice. I think it's worse than grief.
But for the parents of Samia Stumo, there's much more to their daughter's legacy than just anger at Boeing.
There's a fellowship project in my daughter's name, and we have 5 young women doing global health projects in their countries. And these young women are emerging leaders like Samia was.
So you're doing the kind of work that Samia was doing?
Yes, I wish she could do it herself. We're going to make sure that Samia's effect in the world in terms of helping human beings is multiplied. I know she would want
her family to fight that other people not die.
Those fellowships a fitting legacy. And we should also point out tonight that in the civil suit that's been filed against Boeing by the victims' families, Boeing has accepted liability for the crashes and agreed not to blame the pilots.
In fact, they have admitted that Boeing itself was at fault. That's our program for tonight. I'm Amy Robach.
And I'm David Muir. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.
This is a story of just absolute insanity, obsession, love, the dangers of online dating.
It is one of the most desperate love triangles I've ever seen.
My phone starts blowing up with texts from Carrie. I hate you. You ruined my life.
They've been dating for just 2 weeks.
And he couldn't believe that this woman that had just seemed so easygoing was this deranged. She was flat out stalking him.
Carrie's rage seems to be focused on his ex-girlfriend Liz.
He had absolutely no idea the nightmare that his life was about to turn into.
She says, I have Liz tied up in the trunk of the car. You need to call her right now and tell her you hate her. She's a whore, otherwise I'm going to kill her.
This investigation is about to take a left-hand turn that is mind-boggling.
Could it be that the so-called stalker has actually been dead this entire time?
I mean, what? Almost too crazy to be true, except it's all true.
Council Bluffs, Iowa is a Midwestern city with a small-town feel. It has many hardworking people who are willing to help their neighbors, friendly people.
It's a quiet, rural community.
On the outskirts of the city, on the border near Nebraska, is Big Lake Park. The park is huge. It's almost 200 acres, and there are lakes, one filled with rainbow trout, hiking trails, and playgrounds.
Big Lake Park was known to be a place that families frequented. It was very peaceful.
But what happened here on a cold winter night in 2015 is part of a mystery that stumped police for years.
On December 5th, 2015, a woman was at Big Lake Park taking an evening stroll. She'd gone to the park to think while alone on the walking trail in the dark. She took a seat on a bench to rest for a moment. She was approached by another woman.
She said a female approached her from behind, told her to get on the ground, and then fired a shot at her leg.
She said the female ran off into the woods, and then she felt it was safe, so she walked this pathway and called 911 because she had left her phone in her car.
911, what's the address of your emergency? I've been shot away. Oh, my can't wait to spill some blood. Oh, Jesus. Is Jalen still nearby? I don't think so. I took off running. Do you know what she looks like at all? No, she's behind me.
Council Bluffs police responded. They had a helicopter over, could not find a suspect.
This was a shocking event to have occur, but no one was able to find this woman with a gun running through Big Lake Park.
It's a mystery that started 3 years earlier, 10 minutes from Big Lake Park in Omaha, Nebraska, with a man named Dave Krupa. Dave Krupa was a 35-year-old mechanic. I was so fascinated by the fact that Dave Krupa was just a normal guy, a really nice guy. He wasn't the kind of guy you'd expect to find in the middle of a murder mystery. My name is Leslie Rule, and I'm an author. Leslie Rule was so intrigued by this story that she wrote a book about it called A Tangled Web.
For fans of true crime, her last name might sound familiar. Rule is the daughter of legendary true crime author Ann Rule, who wrote the book The Stranger Beside Me about her friendship with Ted Bundy. Rule is carrying on the family tradition.
Dave Krupa liked women. He made no secret about that, and he made no apologies. Dave Krupa was recently separated from Amy Flora, his long-term mate. They had 2 children together.
They'd been together for 12 years.
And he was on his own for the first time in a very long time.
Dave Krupa moved to Omaha in 2012. He got a small, kind of sad single dad apartment, and he got a job at an auto repair shop there.
I didn't know how to venture back into the dating pool. I'd been out of it for a long time, so I felt pretty rusty. I was sitting in an apartment by myself at the time with no furniture, so internet dating was the thing. That was the way to go.
The first person Dave met on an online dating site was a woman by the name of Liz Gollier.
Her full name is Shanna Elizabeth Gollier, but she went by her middle name, Liz. Liz was a single mother with 2 children, and her kids were about the same age as Dave's kids. She had a business, Liz's Housekeeping. Liz loved taking selfies and sending them to her friends.
I thought Liz was very pretty. I was attracted to her right away. So then we set up a date.
Dave's first dates with Liz were at a coffee shop, and they just sat and chatted.
She was sexy, she was bright and shiny, and she was very engaging.
They had a lot of fun together, they got along really well, and it was just a very casual thing.
Dave was upfront. He absolutely did not want a commitment. He just wanted to have a little fun, and he was clear with every woman he met that that was the case.
And Dave was starting to meet a lot of women.
Mary, Kathy, Joyce, Beth, Margaret, Sandra. If the chemistry was there and the woman was willing, Dave was more than happy to explore a sexual relationship.
I was kind of going wild, just, being free for the first time in a long time.
But Dave's outlook on casual hookups changed when he met somebody the old-fashioned way, face-to-face in a chance encounter.
6 months after I met Liz, I'm at the counter managing the shop, and I'm the person greeting customers when they come in, and an extremely attractive woman walks in the door.
It's a woman named Carrie Farber.
She brought her Ford Explorer into his shop to be worked on, and she was beautiful, a lighthearted air about her.
When we looked at each other, there was a little spark. We both smiled. You feel that sometimes.
Carrie Farber was a 37-year-old single mother to a 14-year-old son. She was a computer programmer at a big firm in Omaha.
She's showing me something inside the vehicle, and we're standing there, and we're very close, within a couple inches of each other, and there's some tension.
Carrie talked to me about meeting Dave, and she was like, this guy, totally not my type, but there was just something there.
Then a few days later, he came across her profile on the same online dating site that he had used when he met Liz.
So Carrie and I ended up going to Applebee's for our first date. We hit it off. As we're getting up to leave, I asked Carrie if she wanted to come over and hang out. And she said, yeah. So we went back to my place. We shared a kiss. And then it got a little hotter and a little heavier. And then Carrie stopped and said, okay, if we're going to do this, and this implying sex, that's all it is. You're not my boyfriend. I'm not your girlfriend. I felt like I hit the jackpot with that. I couldn't have wrote it better.
One slightly awkward thing, the night of Dave and Carrie's first date, Liz Gollier came by Dave's apartment to pick up some things that she'd left there.
I walked Carrie out the front door, and she walked right by Liz, and they probably saw each other for 6 seconds.
It was just a brief encounter, maybe 10 seconds or less, but this encounter would go on to have lasting ramifications for all 3 of them.
Carrie didn't seem at all bothered by her encounter with Liz. In fact, she didn't even mention it when she visited with her friend Amber.
She said that during the date she had fun and that she laughed a lot and hadn't laughed like that in a long time, and she didn't know what would happen, but it was working right now.
Carrie's job happened to be right around the corner from where I lived. versus an hour from where she lives.
She had a big project coming up at work. She was working very late hours. Dave offered for her to stay at his house so that she wouldn't have to make that commute back and forth.
I mean, at this point, I've known her 2 weeks and she's got a key to my apartment. I was feeling pretty comfortable with her.
November 13th, 2012, Dave wakes up and gets ready for work, and about 6:30 a.m. he leaves for work for the day.
I give her a kiss and I say, I'll see you later.
When Dave said goodbye to Carrie that morning, he had absolutely no idea of the nightmare that his life was about to turn into.
My phone starts blowing up with texts from Carrie. I hate you. You ruined my life. What is going on? I was blown away.
November 13th, 2012. Dave Krupa wakes up and gets ready for work. And about 6:30 a.m. he gives Carrie a kiss and he leaves for work for the day.
Carrie Farber was his girlfriend of 2 weeks, and they were getting along so well that she sometimes spent the night at his apartment. It was conveniently close to her work, which was just half a mile away.
She's on the couch, got her laptop out, she's doing her thing. So I gotta go to work, so I give her a kiss and I say, I'll see you later. I had expected to see Carrie that evening.
Mid-morning, Dave received a text, and he glanced at it. It was a message from Carrie.
She texts me and says, let's move in together, which was very left field because we had already talked about that not happening. As soon as I can, I text her back and say, I'm not interested. I can't do that. We haven't known each other nearly long enough for that. And almost immediately I get a message back that says, fine, I hate you, I'm dating someone else, I don't want to see you anymore, go away, lots of profanity. I didn't know what to think. I was blown away.
She just changed very quickly from the fun and happy person that he had known just that morning.
It was a day, maybe a day and a half of radio silence, and then my phone starts blowing up with texts from Carrie along the lines of, I hate you, you ruined my life, you're a terrible person. I thought, okay, I don't need this in my life. I dodged a bullet.
They'd been dating for just 2 weeks, and he figured that maybe she'd been putting on an act, and she wasn't who he thought she was.
So who was Carrie Farber? She grew up in this small town called Macedonia, Iowa.
Macedonia is a very small town. It's a very nice place to raise kids because you can let your kids walk down the street without worrying. They can ride their bikes around town, and just a friendly place to live.
Carrie was very close to her mother, Nancy. They talked every day.
She had a lot of friends. She was very gregarious.
By all accounts, Carrie lived fully. When you look at the photograph, she's vivacious. Her hairstyles are constantly changing. She's experimenting with her look and with her life.
You noticed Carrie when she walked into her room. She had a laugh, she had a smile. You were drawn to her.
In an interview that Carrie did with her local paper for her high school graduation, she said she wanted to be known as always having a smile on her face and for being a little bit crazy. And all of her friends and family say Carrie was whip smart.
Early on, she was, even in high school, I remember Carrie being amazing with numbers and computers.
There was a turning point in Carrie's life when she was 22 years old and got pregnant. The relationship with the father didn't work out, and Carrie became a single mom.
She decided she was going to bring the baby up by herself.
She was going to have that baby no matter what and be the best mom she could be. Max was always at the forefront of what Carrie did. He was her number one.
She just doted on him all the time. But I think she was a little overwhelmed just being on her own in her late 20s. She started developing depression.
Carrie had been diagnosed in her 20s with bipolar disorder.
There was one point when she just pretty much was underneath the covers for a good week, maybe 10 days.
She was scared about it, but at the same time knew that she was taking all the steps that she needed to keep it in check and under control.
She had been seeing therapists and was on medication. There was a couple of times when she would stop taking the medication because she said, Mom, I feel like I'm just numb.
But by 2012, Carrie was in a very good place. She landed a good job as a computer programmer.
She was super excited and talked a lot about how that was going to be kind of a life changer for her and for Max, being able to provide in a better way.
Max was just going into high school. Carrie was so excited about classes he was taking and the sports that he was playing.
By the way, Max.
She was his cheerleader. There's some video of Carrie urging on Max as he's water skiing. Carrie also had a new guy she was dating, Dave Krupa.
In November, Carrie asked her mother, Nancy, to keep her son Max for a few days while she stayed with Dave so she could be closer to work.
Right around the same time that Dave got the text from Carrie asking to move in, Carrie sent a text to her mother, Nancy.
I started getting text messages that said that she was taking a job in Kansas, which totally threw me. When I said something to Max about it, he said, well, she had kind of looked at a job down in Kansas. He thought possibly there was a job down there she went to. So I texted her back, and she would not call me and talk to me. Normally I would talk to her at least once a day. It was starting to concern me that she wasn't calling me.
But Nancy figured she'd see Carrie soon because Carrie's half-brother was getting married in just a few days.
Her son Max was to be an usher, and she promised Max that she would return for the wedding.
I was needing to know when she was going to pick up her son to go to this wedding. She wasn't answering me.
Carrie didn't show up to pick up Max, and she didn't call. Everybody was stunned.
That was the final straw for Nancy.
That's when I reported her missing. I called the sheriff's office, and they had somebody come out, and they took my report.
Nancy mentioned to the police that Carrie had been diagnosed as bipolar.
I said, well, yes, she was on medication.
The police jumped on that and said when somebody who's bipolar stops taking their meds, sometimes it can start some really erratic behavior.
They didn't take it too seriously. She was a grown woman. She was still communicating with people.
I just wasn't getting a very urgent reaction from the police, and they just weren't concerned about it.
Things are going to get stranger and scarier. Carrie writes, my favorite thing to do is stand outside your window and stare at you.
Don't know how many times I changed my phone number.
She was no longer just ranting at a boyfriend that things didn't go well with. She was flat out stalking him.
What do you do when somebody invades every space of your life?
This man's life is about to become terrifying.
What had he done to make her hate him so much? In the space of a couple of hours, she had gone from what seemed like the perfect woman to a spiteful, foul-mouthed nut.
Carrie Farber's nowhere to be found. Her family is bewildered, and the police are suspecting she might be having some sort of breakdown. As for Dave Krupa, in the days since receiving her first bizarre text messages, he receives a barrage of angry messages.
She started texting him a bunch of profanities, calling him names, telling him she hated him.
They were bad, and they were just all about how bad of a person I am.
Carrie was acting like a woman scorned. Her messages were filled with jealousy and rage.
Carrie's rage seems to be focused on his on-again, off-again ex-girlfriend, Liz, who he had dated before Carrie. Which is confusing to Dave, because Carrie seemed to be so unaffected by her first interaction with Liz And Carrie is contacting Liz directly too.
Liz gets into contact with me and says that now Carrie is harassing her via text and email.
She was very upset. She wanted to know how this woman that she just had this chance encounter with at Dave's apartment got her phone number, got her email. One day, Liz arrived home from work to find that her garage had been vandalized.
Upon pulling into the garage, she found that someone had written "Pour from Dave" on the inside of her garage in spray paint.
Liz calls the police and files a report.
When Liz tells police that the common link between herself and Carrie is Dave Krupa, they decide to pay him a visit.
The police show up at my work looking for me, and they didn't look very friendly. I was the last known person, or at least the assumed last person, to see her. As soon as they're looking at me with those policeman eyes, that got me pretty rattled. I pulled out my phone and said, no, she's lost her mind. She's going crazy. She's harassing me. Their tone certainly changed from an accusatory one to, oh, okay, we've seen this before.
Meanwhile, back in Iowa, Carrie's mom doesn't know about any of this. All she knows is that her daughter's missing.
Carrie's mother had filed the missing person report with the police, and she was becoming increasingly concerned with each passing day.
In the weeks after she left, Carrie was still communicating with her family. She would send text messages to her mother, Nancy.
When I'd get text messages, I would just say, please call me. I just need to hear your voice. And she would say, well, this has got to be good enough for you. And Maxwell started getting texts saying, we're going to be moving you down to Kansas. You're going to go to school down there. And he was really scared. It was just shocking to me.
Nancy is so concerned that she takes over guardianship of Max in Carrie's absence.
In addition to her brother's wedding, Carrie was missing more family events. She was absent for her own birthday. She missed Thanksgiving. She wasn't around when her son Max turned 15.
She even missed her own father's funeral. And when she didn't come home for that, her mother knew that something was very, very wrong.
Carrie texted, I'm sorry I missed the funeral. Nancy responded, the only way I will know that this is you is if you call me and I hear your voice.
The weather had changed and was starting to get colder. We went into her house, and I noticed her winter coat was sitting on the chair. And I thought, she doesn't have any warm clothes on her. What is she going to do? How is she getting along? Where is she eating? What is she doing?
It was terrifying. It was scary not knowing where she is. Okay, maybe she had gone off her meds. There had been times in the past when she had thought, maybe I don't need these.
The text got mean at one point too, and saying that I wasn't a good mother and that I was controlling.
In the middle of that bleak winter, only one thing was certain. People were afraid. While Carrie's family was afraid for her, Dave Krupa was growing afraid of her.
I would regularly receive 60 plus texts a day, 100 emails a day. It was not uncommon. And as far as phone calls, hundreds. And I changed phone numbers so many times, it was ridiculous.
Carrie would refer to Liz in her messages.
She is nothing. She's a fat cow. She looks like she lost her puppy. Maybe she'll do us all a favor and kill herself. LOL.
She wrote to Liz, if you don't keep your hands and lips off my man, I will hurt you. And she seems to be everywhere.
On one specific occasion, I was sitting in my lazy boy with my feet up, watching TV, trying to relax, and it's nighttime. And I get a text saying, I see you, you're sitting in your chair with your feet propped up, wearing a blue shirt, and those things were true.
She was no longer just ranting at a boyfriend that things didn't go well with. She was flat out stalking him.
Carrie writes, my favorite thing to do is stand outside your window and stare at you.
Then finally, there's a clue.
One night in January, about 2 months after all of this started, Dave came home from work and there was a vehicle in the parking lot. He got closer to the vehicle, and he recognized it to be Carrie's Ford Explorer because he knew it very well. That was how they met. He had worked on the vehicle.
So I took a picture of the license plate, sent it to the police.
He had no idea at the time how big of a piece of evidence this would turn out to be.
They had one perfect fingerprint on it.
In the weeks following Carrie Farver's disappearance, police in 2 different states are trying to find her, but for 2 totally different reasons.
The police in Iowa are looking for Carrie Farver as a missing person.
But less than 5 miles away in Nebraska, just across the Missouri River, police are looking for Carrie Farver as a stalker, somebody that is harassing Dave Krupa and Liz Gollier.
They're all trying to find Carrie Farver.
The best clue so far is Dave's discovery of Carrie's Ford Explorer. The police searched the car and they found no fingerprints except for one.
There was a mint container found in the car that had one perfect fingerprint on it.
But that fingerprint didn't match Carrie, and it didn't match anyone in the FBI's national database. So that lead, so far, is a bust.
But Carrie's mother, Nancy, doesn't need evidence. She knew in her gut that something had happened to her child.
I'd lay awake at night because every kind of scenario was going through your head as to what had happened.
After Carrie's father, Dennis, died, Nancy Rainey had a dream. And he appeared in that dream.
I had a very, very, very vivid dream that Dennis had come to me. And he said, "Nancy, don't worry about her. She's with me." But of course, I was always kept hoping that we'd find her and that she was okay. And then about 5 months after Carrie disappeared, Nancy gets this astounding phone call. I get the call from a gentleman that says that Carrie is at this Siena Francis homeless shelter and that she wants you to come pick her up. My heart just started. I was shaking, and I thought, oh my God, we're gonna bring her home. She's gonna be okay.
This was the first big lead they had since the finding of Carrie's vehicle that they thought might lead to finding her.
So we go over there and we meet up with the investigator.
The police had met them there, and they asked Nancy to wait in the car while they went in. And they came back out a few minutes later shaking their heads. Carrie wasn't there.
It was such a letdown, and I was just devastated. I get this raising my hopes, and then it's dashed again.
Carrie's friend Amber also got a message from Carrie saying that she finally wants to come home.
She said, "Hey, I made a really big mistake, and I took off for a while, and I'm ready to come home now." And I was like, "I'm here. Let's get you home." I could never get her to say that she would meet me anywhere.
Carrie's son Max is losing hope, but just in case, he reached out to his mom on Facebook.
All it said was hi, and she immediately wrote him back, "Hey little man, how are you?" He asked her to answer 3 questions to prove that it was really her. What his middle name was, what the name of their first boxer was, and what his best friend's name was. And she never responded to that message.
Then Carrie posts on Facebook, "I've answered enough questions to prove myself. I'm not missing. I just don't want to come home right now."
Meanwhile, the stalking of Dave Krupa and Liz Gollier has been escalating.
As the months went on, he'd received thousands of texts and emails threatening him.
The messages said things like, I hate you so much I want to drive a knife through your heart. Hey, lose so am I ruining your life yet?
Dave and Liz referred to Carrie as Crazy Carrie.
That was what we would say, Crazy Carrie. Oh, Crazy Carrie this. Oh, I got another email from Crazy Carrie.
The trauma that they were both going through brought them back together and they started dating again.
Rude, hostile messages come into both of their phones as they're both together.
It was actually extremely common for us to be hanging out, and both of our phones would start blowing up with text messages and emails from Carrie.
He had to admit he was impressed by Liz's loyalty. She was pissed at him for inviting a lunatic into their lives, but she was still there.
And as this is going on, Dave is becoming almost numb to all this crazy stuff that's happening almost every day.
I get an email, and it's a picture of what looks like Liz tied up in the trunk of a car. And it says, I have Liz tied up in the trunk of the car, and you need to call her right now and tell her you hate her. She's a whore, otherwise I'm going to kill her. I call Liz, and I say, hey, you're not tied up in the trunk of a car, are you? No, ha. All right, good, denied. And at that point, it was just another day. It wasn't even shocking anymore.
Carrie even emailed Dave with a link to an obituary for Liz.
In it, she writes, I didn't know her very well, except that she was a whore and a man-stealer. Thank God she is gone.
But as crazy as a fake obituary is, things get even creepier and deadlier.
I get a call from Liz, frantic, freaking out. My house is on fire. Somebody's burned my house down. I go over to Liz's house, and there's fire trucks all up and down the street, and there's firemen walking around, and there's hoses, and they're pouring water into place.
Luckily, her children were not home, but many of her belongings were still there, including 2 dogs, a cat, and a snake, and they all were killed in this fire.
There is audio of the officer at the scene talking to Liz about the fire.
From what I've seen so far looking inside, it's pretty obvious it's an intentionally set fire.
The guy that I'm seeing, he has a girlfriend that he dated for 2 weeks, and she's been stalking me since November.
Do you know her name?
It's Carrie. C-A-R-I. She has made threats towards me and my kids. She would text me and tell me she wanted to kill me and my kids. You'd think they were married as much as she's stalking me. She won't leave me alone. She will not go away. I just wish she would go away.
Well, I felt very bad for Liz because I felt like I brought this crazy person into her life.
2 months later, Carrie strikes again.
Dave's auto shop is vandalized with a message for everyone to see. Dave beats women in fluorescent orange spray paint.
I tripped out. I mean, this is my job, and this is on a main street.
Dave became a nervous wreck. He purchased a gun. He was always on edge.
It makes you paranoid. You can't rest, you can't relax. You're always wondering when something else is going to happen and if it's going to escalate.
We were in bed, getting ready to go to sleep, and the next thing I hear sounded like a gunshot.
On the 1-year anniversary of their first date, Carrie Farber sends Dave Krupa a message, to my husband.
The email included a photograph of a knife and a note saying that she'd been creeping around in his building.
The stalking at that point was quite apparent that she had been in and around the building.
Dave Krupa and Liz Goyer have been the focus of Carrie's stalking for over a year now. And this has bonded them, but their relationship isn't really serious.
We were seeing each other, but she was doing her thing and I was doing mine.
Dave has actively been trying to meet other women online, but it seems that Carrie doesn't want that to happen.
One woman who I never actually met, she spent 5 minutes on my Facebook, and that was all it took. She was a target, threatened to be killed, threatened to have their children killed. It was insanity.
Carrie seems to be monitoring his every move and keeping a close eye on his female friends.
In January of 2014, I drove from Sioux Falls to Omaha to visit with Dave. I have known Dave since high school. Dave and I have just always had a special connection. We've always been more than friends.
We were in the living room of the apartment, just chatting old times.
Within a couple of hours, his phone was going crazy.
Apparently, Carrie saw her come in. I actually got a text to the effect of, "I see you in there with that whore."
He told me that he was having issues with an ex that was stalking him. A few hours later, we were in bed, getting ready to go to sleep, and the next thing I hear sounded like a gunshot to me, which was actually a brick being thrown through the bathroom window. I was in a panic. I didn't know what was happening. Police, they came over and talked to Dave for a few minutes. After the police left, Dave had me get into the car with him, and he said he needed to go check on Liz because Carrie had threatened Liz in the past prior to this incident with me.
Despite all this drama, Liz Goyer is not scared off, and she and Dave try to just kind of go on with their lives. Even going on a double date with her friend Cherokee.
They were great together, Dave and Liz. They joked around. I know Liz wanted more, but she wasn't that type of person that wasn't gonna push herself onto someone.
The stalking by Carrie is this dark cloud in their lives. They've been trying to get help from investigators for more than a year, but nothing puts a stop to the harassment.
And it's not just Dave and Liz that are being harassed.
Dave's ex and the mother of his children, Amy Flora, was also getting threatening messages from Carrie, calling her all sorts of names.
I thought Amy was probably going to kill me because she got drug into it. Mentally, it was a huge strain on everybody involved. Nothing was being done about it. The police had dropped it off at some point, so it was just something I had to deal with. Being stalked and harassed was just part of life.
The case had become cold. Detectives Ryan Avis and Jim Doty worked at the Potawatomi County Sheriff's Office in Council Bluffs.
Neither Avis nor Doty had actually been working on the case of the missing Carrie Farber, but they'd been aware of it in the police department.
We'd heard about the case. It was kind of water cooler talk around the office. It intrigued us because it was a single mom who was very into her kid and family, and it just didn't make sense to us that she just vanished.
Is there more to it, and is there something else that we're not seeing? It was something that we were both interested in just talking about it, but we didn't have the case file.
You don't usually go and volunteer for a case, but in this intrigued us enough that we asked, hey, can we take a look at it and see if we can put a fresh new look on it?
Doty and Avis asked their superiors if they could take another look at the Carrie Farber case. And so they began looking at it from a new angle.
Jim's gonna work it like she's dead, and I'm gonna work it like she's alive. I'm gonna try and prove every which way I can that Carrie is still alive and is out there, and Jim's gonna try and prove every which way that she is not. Carrie's checking account had no activity. It's not normal for adults to just up and leave and literally spend no money, no one's seen them, and no one's heard their voice. It just didn't make sense.
And one of the things about these text messages, they don't look like they're written by Carrie. They're filled with spelling errors and grammatical errors. And her mother said Carrie never would have sent messages like that.
Detectives Doty and Avis were aware that Carrie had been diagnosed as bipolar, but they didn't think it had anything to do with why she went missing.
How many people in the world are bipolar and they don't just go missing for no reason, whether they take their meds or don't take their meds?
And life had been good for Carrie Farver. In fact, it had never been better.
She had a good income, a good house. I had come to the conclusion that I could not prove she was actually alive.
This is a turning point in this because they start to contemplate the idea, could it be that she's actually been dead this entire time? So if Carrie Farver was dead, what happened to her after she left Dave's apartment on that early morning 2 years before?
The decision made by Doty and Avis to reopen the case would be a true turning point.
If not for Detectives Doty and Avis, chances are this case would never have been solved.
They smelled a big fish, a big problem, something really weird.
This investigation is about to take a left-hand turn that nobody saw coming. That is mind-boggling.
Everything you thought you knew was a lie.
This is a bizarre and twisted case of a fatal attraction. It's about an obsessive woman that would stop at nothing to get what she wanted.
It was just another one of her schemes to bring Dave back into her life and make herself look like a victim.
How did I not see anything, and how could I be so naive or so stupid or so gullible?
It changed this from a missing persons investigation, and now it's a homicide investigation. Is there anyone that you think would want to hurt Carrie?
How could this person do this to my daughter? For what reason?
The key to the case is figuring out if Carrie is not alive, who has been actually sending these messages to Dave and to Liz.
This isn't good. So now this person is armed. They've already proven to be dangerous.
It was like the killer wanted to keep a keepsake of what she had done. It was just chilling.
Holy Christ, this is despicable.
With no body, no murder weapon, no witnesses. I mean, what?
By the spring of 2015, 37-year-old single mom Carrie Farver has been missing for over 2 years. Nobody has seen her and nobody has heard her voice.
The only sign of her was through texts and email.
These include hundreds of violent and threatening text messages sent to her ex, Dave Krupa, and his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Liz Gollier, also known as Shanna.
A lot of people thought she'd just gone off her meds and she was, just went off the deep end and left. But I knew that that's not what happened.
Carrie's mother, Nancy, is convinced that something terrible has happened to her daughter. Nancy was really frustrated. She felt the police weren't taking her concerns seriously. While maternal instinct is the most powerful of intuitions, it's not unusual for a mother's concerns to be ignored. Carrie's mother was not the first woman in the throes of panic to be ignored by people in a position to help.
I knew what my daughter was like, and she wouldn't stay away this long. Something has happened. It was as if nobody believed Nancy that something terrible had happened to Carrie until Detectives Jim Doty and Ryan Avis appeared on the case.
By the time Avis and Doty took over, the case had become cold.
What we did first was just go back to the case file. We started looking through everything that the previous investigator had. To me, the thing that was glaring was Liz. This lady had no involvement in Carrie's life until all of a sudden she went missing.
According to Liz, she only met Carrie once in this brief encounter outside of Dave's apartment.
All of a sudden she's this focus of harassment. Her name was all over all the reports. So to me, there was something with Liz. She definitely was a person of interest.
Key to the case at this point is figuring out if Carrie is not alive, who has been actually sending these messages to Dave and to Liz.
Myself and Ryan were not digital experts at all, so we had to call one of our coworkers, Tony Cava, who's our digital forensic expert, and had him come in and start working the case hand in hand with us.
Carrie, or the person, the imposter who was pretending to be Carrie, sent Dave about 15,000 email messages over a 3-year span. But we knew these messages don't seem to really be coming from Carrie Farber, and that was the initial mystery. So I thought there's got to be a way we can track down this digital activity.
When Liz was getting all of these messages through the course of investigation, she actually gave her phone to police and allowed them to dump all her files and review them.
Jim and I had the advantage of being the second pair of eyes to look at it and go back over to other details that were maybe overseen.
One of the things they found when they downloaded Liz's phone was a photograph of Carrie Farber's Ford Explorer.
We looked at the metadata of that photo, and it was taken about a month before police even recovered her vehicle. So somehow Liz knew where Carrie's vehicle was before law enforcement even did. Another thing we found on the phone download, there were 6 calls that were made to Carrie's residence. It was using the *67 prefix to disguise the number, and so Liz was calling Carrie 6 times. This didn't make sense to us because she said she'd only met Carrie one time passing through the hallway. We found an email that Carrie had sent to Dave Krupa. It consisted of a picture of a woman who was tied up. We found that picture of that bound woman in Liz's phone, and the metadata showed it was taken from Liz's phone.
They realized that Liz had put duct tape on her own mouth and tied up her own hands and crawled into the trunk of a car.
I wanted to go talk to Nancy and tell her that I believed her. I believed her daughter didn't just vanish, that her daughter didn't just leave her and her son alone, that I believe somebody was responsible for what happened to Carrie. But I couldn't tell her everything we knew at that time because it was still an active case.
When he called, he said, "Can I come out and talk to you?" And I was just a little bit short with him because I thought, you haven't done anything so far. What are you going to do now? I said, okay. So he came out and he said, I just want you to know, he said, I don't think she left on her own free will. And that was the first time anybody in his authority position had told me that.
She was happy to know that we had reopened the case and that we had made some progress.
I honestly felt like maybe something was going to happen now.
And this visit leads to Dodie and Avis looking at yet another clue.
It's a clue that had come up earlier, but now with Liz Gollier in their sights as a suspect, their fresh eyes make all the difference.
So when we went to interview Nancy, she informed us that she had received a picture of a check via text message.
Right after Carrie disappeared, Nancy got a text from her, and it said that she had sold all of her furniture and she wanted Nancy to let the buyer into the house, to let them pick it up.
I'm to help this person go into her house and get her furniture out of there. And here's the check. She texts me a picture of a check from a person that was made out to Carrie.
And it was signed Shanna Gollier, which we knew Liz Gollier, real name was Shanna.
And the signature is yet another link between these two women, Carrie and Liz, who were supposed to be strangers.
Granted, we didn't give us any answers on what had happened to Carrie, but we knew Liz knew more than she was telling us.
All signs were pointing back to Liz.
And then Liz herself goes to police with a new suspect.
I look down the hallway and I see another investigator walking Liz down our hallway.
And she says she's come to this stunning realization. It might not have been Carrie Farber harassing her all along. Police have been taking a close look at Liz Gollier.
All of the investigating they had done was leading them to the idea that Carrie Farber was dead and Liz had been impersonating her this entire time.
Looking at Liz's phone download, we had the picture of Carrie's vehicle. We had the *67 phone calls that Liz had placed to Carrie's home phone number.
And there's one more piece of evidence, that mystery fingerprint left in Carrie's car. But so far, police can't find a match in their database.
One of the things we did when we took the case is we had that fingerprint compared to Liz's fingerprints. It was a match.
Doty delivered startling news to Dave Krupa. He told him that they suspected that Liz Gollier was pretending to be Carrie.
Police had come to me and said, Liz is the culprit. But I still hadn't seen any evidence myself. So I was either trying to ignore the whole thing or trying to understand how this person I spent so much time with could be this other person I didn't know.
He never questioned his stalker's identity. She said she was Carrie, so who else could it be?
Dave would receive messages from Carrie while he and Liz were together, so Dave thought, how could Liz be the stalker?
Meanwhile, police can't prove that Liz murdered Carrie, and there still isn't enough for an arrest. At this point, police get a lucky break. In December of 2015, Liz Gollier walked into the Pottawatomie County Sheriff's Office.
I look down the hallway and I see another investigator walking Liz down our hallway and into his office. So I eavesdrop a little bit. I hear Liz telling the other investigator something about a harassment report.
Liz leaves and Detective Avis sees an opening.
Liz Gollier coming to us and wanting to talk about something was a huge moment and an opportunity that we could not miss. Within 30 minutes of Liz leaving our office, I hopped in my truck and I drove to her house in Council Bluffs and just knocked on the door. She opened the door and I told her I was an investigator with the sheriff's office and I had heard she had stopped in. Hi, was it Shannon?
Yeah, we're listening.
I told her that I didn't have a heavy caseload at the time and I'd be more than happy to help her with whatever report that she had tried to file. She let me come in, we sat down and talked. My sergeant you had just talked to, and he said that you were trying to file harassment.
Yeah, a harassment. The reports have been made against Carrie Faber.
Carrie Faber?
Yes, F-A-R-E-R.
I knew who Carrie was, obviously, and I just played dumb. I wanted her to think that I had no clue of what she was talking about, just to lower her guard.
She used statement right only for about 2 weeks.
Liz tells Avis she's come to this stunning realization. It might not have been Carrie Farver harassing her all along.
I'm not even sure if it really is Carrie Faber.
She believed that it hadn't been Carrie who was stalking Dave all this time after all. In fact, she believed it was Amy Flora, Dave's ex.
Amy Flora is Dave Krupa's ex-girlfriend and also the mother of his children. All these years, Liz thought she had been harassed by Carrie, but now she thought maybe it was actually Amy this whole time pretending to be Carrie, and that would make more sense, right?
They only dated for 2 weeks, and I don't understand why a person would still be stalking him almost 3 years later. It's getting ridiculous. She keeps stalking me on Facebook.
So Amy still would like to be with Dave?
I'm guessing. I don't know. I just wanted to leave me alone.
I then request, hey, could I do a download of your phone to extract those messages? We have a machine that'll plug in your phone. Sign right there. We're giving you consent to retrieve information. In that moment, I was so giddy, I can't believe I'm going to download her phone and she's just going to hand it over to me.
When Liz's phone was downloaded in 2013, Liz was a victim, reporting a stalker. So only the current information was downloaded. Now, however, she was a suspect, and she was unaware that detectives have the ability to download everything on the phone, even things she thought she had deleted.
I ran it straight to Tony Cava.
Tony Cava, who is the forensic digital expert, is going to actually start examining her phone. But in the meantime, there is an even more pressing concern. Dave Krupa's gun is missing.
I purchased a pistol for self-protection in case Carrie would come in the house with ill intent towards me or my children.
Dave came home one evening and noticed something was amiss.
The box that I kept the weapon in been moved. My stomach drops. I'm just, oh no. I open the box, the weapon is missing, so I immediately call the police and tell them I have a firearm stolen.
Liz had mentioned the missing gun to Detective Avis. She implied that Amy Flora was the thief.
Do you know what kind of gun it was? 9mm?
This isn't good. So now this person is armed. They've already proven to be dangerous, so it was a heart-stopping moment.
The missing gun was in the hands of someone who was about to pull the trigger.
1-9, severe emergency.
On December 5th, 2015, 6 days after Dave's gun was stolen, a call was placed to police from Big Lake Park in Council Bluffs, Iowa.
It was Liz Gollier. She had been shot and she was bleeding alone on the walking trail in the dark.
911, what's the address of your emergency? Oh, yeah, I've been shot away. Oh, Jesus.
Liz Gollier came here to clear her head and walked out about halfway on this bridge and was approached by a female, she said, and the female came up behind her and said, "How do you like Dave?" And then told her to lay on the ground and shot her in the leg.
Do you know what she looked like at all? No, she's behind me.
Liz was shot in the thigh. I didn't do any permanent damage. There was a lot of blood, and she was rushed to the hospital by ambulance.
At the beginning, Liz said she didn't know who shot her, but she kind of changed that story and eventually said Amy Flora shot her.
Amy Flora, Dave's ex and the mother of his 2 kids. To police, this story makes very little sense.
When I learned that Liz Gollier had been shot out here, I found it highly suspicious that the day before, she felt the need to tell me that Dave Krupa's gun had been stolen too. And less than 24 hours later, she is shot. I mean, it's just odd, to say the least. I never believed that Amy Flora shot Liz Gollier ever.
She had an alibi, and the evidence just didn't point to there being anyone else in the park that night.
It was pretty quickly determined that most likely Liz Gollier had shot herself. Amy Flora was cleared nearly immediately that evening.
Another one of her schemes to bring Dave back into her life and make herself look like a victim.
When the shooting happened, this is finally when Dave gets it.
At this point, Dave can no longer deny the truth. It's Liz, not Carrie, who's been tormenting and stalking him for all these years.
It was undeniable at that point. I knew it was her, and I knew it had to be my gun. It was like running into a brick wall in a race car. It'd be like if gravity just failed. The first thing my mind did was start to go back to all the things that had happened over all these years. And how did I not see anything? And how could I be so naive or so stupid or so gullible? Everything you thought you knew was a lie.
For Dave, the frustration at this point is overwhelming.
If they don't arrest her soon, I'm gonna kill her.
Deputy Tony Cava is actually on a mission to prove Liz is the culprit.
He has the recent download of Liz Gollier's phone and all of the messages that are supposedly been sent from Carrie Farber.
He's spending hours of his own free time, more than 3,000 hours, trying to decipher where those messages actually came from.
Liz signed up for upwards of 20 or 30 fake addresses that say they're Carrie Farber, and they're different variations on Carrie's name or even her real email address. Some of the very first ones came from carriefarber@gmail.com. I mean, they would, if you didn't look very closely and you received this message, you would think it was from the real Carrie Farber.
His patience and his persistence pay off, and eventually he is able to trace the messages right back to Liz Gollier.
Every account that we look at, every impersonated message, every text message, there's always a connection back to an account that she has, to a device that she has, or to her house.
Cava also discovered that part of her ruse, Liz was using an app which actually allowed her to send messages and receive them at a later time.
She was able to send messages pretending to be Carrie, and they would arrive while she was sitting on the couch next to Dave. From Dave's point of view, Liz couldn't have sent it because she was sitting next to him the whole time. It gave a perfect alibi to Liz. This must have taken Liz 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week. This seemed to be a full-time occupation for her, trying to stalk people and send them messages.
For Doty and Avis, the mission at this point is to get more evidence to speed up the investigation.
We brought her in for an interview about 2 weeks after she was shot.
Doty tells her he's working on a missing person case. They're trying to find Carrie Farber.
The case is regarding Carrie Farber. Are you familiar with her?
Barely even know her.
Yeah.
Ran into her one time.
Okay.
Just bypassing her, going into Dave's apartment to pick up my stuff.
We developed a bit of a ruse that we were going to employ on Liz. We were going to tell her that we had found remains that we believed were Carrie. We had a pretty significant break in the case. Okay. There have been some remains that have been located. The initial indication that these remains are Carrie. Okay. Is there anyone that you think would want to hurt Carrie?
I didn't know her long enough to know if anybody wanted her.
Liz then again shifts the blame away from Carrie Farber towards Amy Flora.
She was with him for 12 years. And she still goes in and out of his life all the time, so.
Yeah. So you think she could have been the person that did some of that stuff to you?
I'm just saying, as another person who would be possessive of Dave, it would be her.
When I'm sitting across from Liz, I knew most likely she was a murderer. Even though she didn't look intimidating, that was always in the back of my mind. I knew that she was responsible for whatever happened to Carrie. And I knew in order for us to solve this, she was going to have to believe that I genuinely thought Amy was responsible for all of it. In my head, I'm thinking if she was bold enough to go and then shoot you, okay, she could easily be bold enough to have done something to Carrie.
And that's where Detective Doty tells her that he needs her help to get Amy to confess to Carrie's murder.
We told Liz, if you get any type of messages from Amy to have anything to do with what happened to Carrie, to let us know. That's like gold to me if we had something like that. Because then we could start building a case. We knew she'd give us that information because she wants to see Amy out of the picture. She wants to see Amy in jail.
Police are hoping Liz will incriminate herself, give up details about the murder, and possibly lead them to the body.
This is a genius move by the police. The question is it going to work?
All right, thank you much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Liz Gollier had no idea that the investigators were on her tail, and they wanted to keep it that way. Liz always believed that she was smarter than the police. She thought she could outfox them. Unfortunately for her, she ran into Doty and Avis, and they set a clever trap.
Detective Doty enlists Liz to help him get Amy to confess to Carrie's murder.
And of course, the police know that Amy has nothing to do with Carrie's murder and that she's not involved in this in any way.
The role I tried to play was that I wanted to solve Carrie's homicide, and I believed Amy was responsible. And so we told Liz, if you get any type of messages from Amy to have anything to do with what happened to Carrie, to let us know.
It took just a few days for Liz to play right into their hand.
We started receiving messages that she said were from Amy, where Amy confesses to shooting Liz at Big Lake Park.
The emails said, "I shot you, Liz, to make sure Dave stayed away from you. I got rid of the gun."
But what Detective Doty really needs are the details about the final moments of Carrie Farber's life, and he explains this in a phone call to Liz.
See if you could kind of push her for some more info on the Carrie thing, what she did to Carrie and so forth like that. That would help our case immensely if it was more specific.
So you guys want me to try and email her back?
I'm leaving that in your court, Liz. I mean, if that's something you would feel okay doing, that'd be really helpful for us.
Just a few days later, Liz forwards a new email. This one she also says is from Amy, and it's got details about Carrie's murder.
When I met Crazy Carrie, she would not stop talking about Dave and him being her husband. She tried to attack me, but I attacked her with a knife. I stabbed her 3 or 4 times in the chest and stomach area, and then took her out and burned her. I stuffed her body in a garbage can with crap. The details were bone-chilling because they were graphic.
At this point, Detectives Doty and Avis pushed Liz almost to the breaking point and used her obsession over Dave Krupa against her.
Liz Golyer's worst nightmare was Dave Krupa getting back together with Amy Flora and potentially reestablishing their relationship. So we decided that maybe we could nudge Dave Krupa into moving in with Amy.
Shortly after that happens, I get a call from Liz. She's bawling on the phone, and she's so upset that Amy isn't in prison yet.
Looks like the only person that benefited was her. So she gets to shoot somebody, and then she gets to kill another person, and then she gets to move in with Davey, and she gets to be free. And you guys aren't arresting her.
Liz presses Jody on why the Amy confession email isn't enough evidence to have her arrested.
It's very graphic on what she did to her, and she's still not arrested.
Trying to build a case is very difficult. I would tell Liz, hey, we need more information, things that only the killer would know.
Within days, more Amy confessions appeared.
She writes, I really did kill Carrie, and I did do it in her own car.
These emails gave us Carrie's vehicle as a crime scene. So what we wanted to do is go back and look at that vehicle to determine if that crime happened there.
This is the 3rd time this car has been searched, but this time the police actually know what they're looking for.
We opened up this door, we pulled out the passenger seat, and we pulled off the fabric off that passenger seat, and that's where we found that big red stain right at the bottom of the seat. It was a positive test for human blood.
I felt like we had located the murder scene, finally. Tangible evidence, finally, instead of digital evidence.
We took the DNA from the blood that we found on the seat. It was a match for Carrie Farber's DNA. It's a huge moment. It changed this from a missing persons investigation, and now it's a homicide investigation.
Omaha police are now pulled into the case since that's where the murder likely happened.
I'm a cold case detective in the Omaha Police Department Homicide Unit.
Detective Schneider wanted to talk to Liz. She had a warrant for an unpaid traffic citation, so that gave him an excuse to actually go arrest her and bring her in.
The reason why you're brought down here in handcuffs is because you have a misdemeanor warrant.
Now, once she's actually in the interview chair, Detective Schneider tells her the real subject of their interview that day. Carrie Farber.
Now, the reason why you're in this chair right now today is because you have a lot of questions that you need to answer for me. Her phone was at your house right after she disappeared. And I want to ask you how you can explain that to me, please.
She's never been to my house.
Your fingerprints are inside her vehicle. How would your fingerprints be inside her vehicle?
I don't know, because I've never been in her car.
You drove her car.
No, I didn't. I've never been inside her car. I've never even been around her car. Ever.
Your fingerprints are in there.
No, I haven't. I'm not lying. I've never been around her car. I've never even seen it.
She definitely was giving me the old evil eye. She was upset. You could tell by being confronted. For years and years, people have been sending emails under Carrie's fictitious accounts. The IP addresses show up to whose house? Your house.
I haven't had internet at my house.
You definitely see a woman who thinks she's smarter than the police, who doesn't recognize that she's in a mousetrap.
Are you going to sit in this chair and be remorseful? Or are you going to sit in this chair and be cold-blooded? Because right now, after 4 years, this man has been looking for answers.
Detective Schneider then confronts Liz and tells her he knows that she wrote the so-called Amy confession emails.
Why would you create all these emails?
I haven't created any emails.
All these have been coming from your house.
And I'm not going to be accused of something that I didn't do.
Liz is the type of person where it could be 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you could tell her, Liz, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And she would say, no, it's not, it's midnight. Her finger's pointing right at you.
I'm done talking and I'm going to have my attorney because I didn't do anything.
While this interrogation is taking place with Detective Schneider, Detectives Avis and Doty have gotten a search warrant and are conducting a search of Liz's apartment.
When we were searching her apartment, we found two things. We found Carrie's digital camera and camcorder. That means at some point, Liz went into Carrie's house and stole those items from her house and has kept them for years after.
On Carrie's camera, investigators find video taken just 2 days before Carrie was killed. She had just discovered that her Ford Explorer had been vandalized.
And it's the last known video of Carrie.
So Thursday night, apparently somebody here in the whopping metropolis of Macedonia, Iowa, decided Max's Explorer was not the right color. We're gonna go see if we can fix that.
Somebody thought they were quite the artist. Investigators now believe it was Liz who vandalized the car.
There's, all over the hood.
The police finally had enough evidence to get an arrest warrant.
But the strongest evidence against Liz is actually discovered after her arrest.
I came to a photo that no one had seen before.
It was like the killer wanted to keep a keepsake of what she had done. It was just chilling.
After they arrested Liz Gollier, of course, the next step is the actual preparation of the trial. Douglas County Prosecutor Brenda Beadle took on the case.
This was by far the most difficult case I've ever tried. Most homicides are dark. This one was bizarre, to the point where it would take some convincing to make somebody believe that it actually happened. But there's no way that someone would let their dog die in a fire that they started. There's no way that someone would shoot themselves in the femur.
Liz Gollier's defense attorney is James Martin Davis.
James Martin Davis is somewhat of a legend in Omaha, Nebraska, a very, very well-known defense attorney.
Davis saw huge flaws in the case against Liz Gollier.
Not only was there no body, there was no crime scene, there was no murder weapon, there was no proof that she even died. We waived the jury trial and to move it up so I could try this case, hopefully before they find a body.
In waiving the jury trial, Davis is requesting that the trial be presided over by a judge as the fact finder instead of a jury.
And we want to get it over with. They're scrambling now still to find the body, and they don't have a body.
A few months before the trial, Ryan Avis and Tony Cava paid a visit to Dave Krupa, just as they had many times before.
And they turned around to leave, and Cava, kind of as an afterthought, said, "Hey, is there anything, we missed? Anything at all?"
The last few times we talked to him, he always said no, he couldn't think of anything. For some reason, Dave remembered he had a tablet that was in storage for the past couple of years.
Had been in a box for I don't know how long, a year and a half probably. And I don't even know why I thought about it.
When I examined the tablet, it had a micro SD card in it. And that memory card, it looked blank. If you plugged it into your computer, it would look like there was nothing there, but there was deleted information. That SD card, it turns out it had been in Liz's phone. And it had thousands and thousands of deleted images that she thought were gone. But we were able to retrieve them. There were selfies that Liz had taken. I mean, there was everything that you would normally have on your cell phone. But then I came to a photo that no one had seen before. It was reddish, and I wasn't sure what I was looking at first, but it turned out to be a human foot. Human foot with a tattoo.
And the foot was decomposing. So this person was dead.
So you have to wonder, whose tattoo is this? What we discovered is that Carrie Farver had that tattoo on her foot.
And we were able to figure out that Chinese tattoo was the symbol for mother.
Mother. It was a role she loved. And of course she loved her own mother. How perfectly fitting that the symbol of the thing most sacred to her would be the single most powerful evidence to emerge.
This photo, it was shocking. It made me realize that Liz Golyer killed Carrie Farver, and she's taking photos of her body.
It's really disturbing, almost like a keepsake or a trophy. I felt like our case was not the strongest before this, but once we had this, I felt confident.
Armed with this powerful new piece of evidence, prosecutors head to trial.
This is a bizarre and twisted case of a fatal attraction. It's about an obsessive woman that would stop at nothing to get what she wanted.
And you're gonna not hear a single eyewitness saying, yeah, we saw her kill her. We saw her stab her. Well, not a single eyewitness even saw my client with the victim in this case.
The prosecution truly did a masterful job laying out everything they had.
Of course, key to the prosecution, those messages sent over years and years of Liz impersonating Carrie and pretending Carrie was alive to her mother and her son. Those messages led Carrie's son Max to reach out to his mom 3 years after she disappeared. He wrote, "If this is really you, please come back. I want you to be at my graduation."
It's so evil. It's so harsh for this family to see these and get hope.
She's just diabolical and just cruel. It's mind-blowing that someone was capable of doing all of these things over the time period that she did them. Years.
Even Liz's own attorney is struck by his client's cruelty.
I would think to myself, without disclosing my feelings to the client, I thought, holy Christ, this is despicable. But it doesn't mean that they're first-degree cold-blooded murderers.
As for Liz, she remained unfazed, even through the most graphic, damning testimony.
She was a nice woman. Never displayed any emotion.
As for the motive, the prosecution doesn't have to prove that. But in this case, it seemed pretty obvious.
Liz Gollier's motive was a man, and that man was Dave Krupa.
I tried to show, wait a minute, this guy's a nice guy, but he's not somebody that somebody would kill for. And why would she kill Carrie Farver?
In her mind, she felt Dave Krupa was worth all of this, so it wasn't necessarily just about Dave, it's about the guy and about winning.
Despite the overwhelming evidence presented by the prosecution, there was no guarantee there was going to be a guilty verdict.
Question was, would Nancy and her family get justice?
How could this person do this to my daughter? For what reason? For what earthly reason can you do this to anybody?
And what is Liz Gollier's response to the accusations against her?
I wrote to Liz and asked if she had anything she'd like to say.
This is one of the few cases that went to trial with no body, no murder weapon, no witnesses. It's a hard case to prove, it's a hard case to make, and it's even harder to get a conviction. But the web Liz Gollier was weaving, well, she got caught in it. Instead of being the spider, she became the insect.
The judge found Liz Gollier guilty of first-degree murder.
Carrie Farver did not voluntarily disappear and drop off the face of the earth. Very sadly, she was murdered.
Liz was sentenced to life in prison. I'm glad it's over with. And she's can't hurt anybody else anymore.
I want Liz to go away and never do this to anybody again. Nancy and Carrie's sons were foremost, in my mind. They're unfortunately the ones that have to live with the repercussions.
Since 2017, Liz Gollier has been at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women.
ABC News reached out to Liz Gollier for an interview. She declined. But she has exchanged letters with author Leslie Rule.
Liz wants out of prison. She's claiming that the real killer is still out there. I will not stop fighting until I am set free and they find the right person.
She's a psychopathic, toxic narcissist. It's all about her. As for Dave, the years of being stalked and harassed and fooled by Liz have had a big impact.
I'm paranoid as hell. I really am. I don't trust anybody. I really don't. To me, Dodie, Avis, Chava, they're all heroes.
Those guys, they mean the world to me. I can't thank them enough. They're my boys.
You just kept thinking about Nancy and Max, and that's kind of what just kept driving us, is to get them answers.
And it was important for us to clear Carrie's name because she was accused of stalking, she was accused of harassment, and she didn't do any of those things, and that's not who she was.
It's almost like murdering the victim twice. Because first she actually murders her as a human being, and then she's murdering her reputation and her memory. It's so fundamentally evil. You know, there's no fate bad enough for her.
Carrie was only 37 when she died. I would just want people to remember her as the fun-loving, talented, smart woman that she was. And she loved her son, and she was a tremendous mother, and she was a hard worker. If I could talk to Carrie right now, I'd say I love you. I'm so glad that you were in my life. And I miss you terribly.
And that's our program for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Amy Robach.
And I'm David Muir from all of us here at 2020 and ABC News. Good night.
कोई चावल रत्ना दे असी माया टुर जाना तुसी मालक वतना दे असी माया टुर जाना असी माया टुर जाना तुसी मालक वतना दे लवे मोरोंदा तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे जे कोई तेरे जे आयो रोंदा तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे जे कोई तेरे जे आयो रोंदा कड़े उत्ते जा बैठा आया सी मेहमान जना डोला अखियां वेला बैठा आया सी मेहमान जना आया सी मेहमान जना डोला अखियां वेला बैठा हाल फकीरां दा दिल नूं वे चंगा लगदा एक माई कश्मीरां दा दिल नूं चंगा लगदा दिल नूं वे चंगा लगदा एक माई कश्मीरां दा सब चिलसा जिंदगी ते मेल जना रही जिंदगी ते फिर मिलसा जिंदगी ते मेल जना जिंदगी ते मेल जना रही जिंदगी ते फिर मिलसा काले नी असी हुण टुरवा चले तुसी रब दे हवाले नी असी हुण टुरवा चले असी हुण टुरवा चले तुसी रब दे हवाले नी कोई चावल रतना दे असी माया टुर जाना तुसी मालक वतना दे असी माया टुर जाना असी माया टुर जाना तुसी मालक वतना दे लवे मोरोंदा तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे जे कोई तेरे जे आयो रोंदा तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे जे कोई तेरे जे आयो रोंदा कड़े उत्ते जा बैठा आया सी मेहमान जना डोला अखियां वेला बैठा आया सी मेहमान जना आया सी